It's not unusual for global central bankers to meet. It is unusual for global central bankers to meet when the markets are volatile, trade tensions are heightened, the global economy is slowing, the bond market is flashing a warning sign, and there's a lot of uncertainty over interest rate policy. But that's exactly what's happening in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, and the stakes are high. This annual gathering of federal officials is turning into one of the most anticipated of all, especially given the deep divisions among policymakers. Steve Liesman is there.
As the Fed gathers in the shadow of the Teton Mountains for its annual Jackson Hole meeting, the first officials to speak didn't tell the markets what they wanted to hear about the need for deep interest rate cuts in the months ahead.
I didn't think the cut was appropriate necessarily, but I went along with it to get back to neutral. But I'm on hold right now. My forecast is just a hold.
My sense was we've added accommodation, and it wasn't required in my view. I think we're in a good place relative to the mandates that we're asked to achieve.
Dallas Fed President Robert Kaplan said he wants to avoid cutting rates if he can, but he does seem concerned that the big decline in bond yields is sending the Fed a message it should not ignore.
The whole curve has moved down over the last 3.5 months. And the Fed funds rate at 2 to 2.25 is now above every rate along the curve, which to me is a little bit of a reality check that says it's possible our monetary policy setting is a little tighter than I would have thought 3 or 4 months ago.
The comments from the three Fed presidents highlight divisions in the rate-setting Federal Open Market Committee about where to put interest rates right now. 8 of 10 voting members supported a rate cut in July, but there were 2 dissents, and minutes of the meeting released Wednesday showed the dissenters had backing from some of the non-voters. Meanwhile, markets are banking on several rate cuts from the Fed this year, and President Trump insults the Fed almost daily in his tweets, urging the Fed to cut rates. He recently called the Fed clueless. All of this raises the stakes for Fed Chairman Jerome Powell, who will deliver a keynote speech tomorrow at the Jackson Hole Summit. In deciding what to do with rates, Powell has to navigate between U.S. growth that's around trend of 2%, but global economies that are weak, a U.S. consumer who is strong, but manufacturing which is slowing, and several members of his committee who are divided about whether to hold rates or cut them. Another factor, if the Fed doesn't cut rates, it could ignite another sell-off in markets that forced the central bank earlier this year to reverse policy. It's not a set of easy choices to face in the bucolic setting of the Teton Mountains. For Nightly Business Report, I'm Steve Liesman.